Hey everyone, welcome back to Attacking Third. We said goodbye to the NWSL draft last year after the final in 2024 due to the CBA. There's no more draft. Players out of college are just free agents. So we decided to take a trip down memory lane and redraft the 2024 rookie class based on what we know now. Hindsight is 2020, and we are going to use every bit of it that we can to redraft this class. This was a very fun exercise for me to kind of dive into and look through the draft class and the roster and see who went where. So let's do it. Let's start. Who would we take number one overall today, knowing what we know from their performance last year and what they did? Sandra, I'm gonna start with you because you had a lot of mock drafts last year.
Yeah.
Curious if
Yes.
you're gonna go with your same person that you picked as your number one for your mock draft, but who would you take number one overall today?
100%. I'm gonna throw it back to the work. Listen, and we've had this player on the show, and I already apologized in person, but I had a couple of mock drafts going into last year's draft because that's what we do sometimes. You got to crank out that content, so it's not just enough to have one, but multiple mock drafts. And in my very first one, I absolutely had Croy Bethune going number one overall. I was so impressed by this player collegiately that I thought there was enough here for this player to go that high, that she had so much promise. And there is something to be said. There really is, for players who take their time collegiately and then make that leap to go pro versus maybe what we've seen with some younger players going pro where it takes them a little bit longer to get acclimated. I didn't think that was going to be necessary for Croy Bethune. She went out and proved everyone correct by having the incredible season that she did. I had another mock draft where, unfortunately, I was influenced. Okay, I was absolutely influenced. Okay, I was too deeply influenced by the conversations that I was having and everything, and I put her lower in my second mock draft. But absolutely, knowing what we know now, number one overall, 100%.
Croy Bethune did go number 3 to Washington Spirit, but Christine, who do you have? Who would be your number one draft pick if you could
Yeah,
redraft?
I literally have Mike Croy. I feel like knowing what we know, even with her injury, she still should have been the first, and it's shocking at this juncture that she wasn't. But I feel like, I it's a hard argument. I still think Croy. Yep,
Yeah,
Croy.
Yeah.
respect. D.
So obviously, I think Croy deserves to go first. Croy's the best player from last year by far. No argument there. But I kind of like that she went third because that gave, if I were, everybody thinks I should get drafted first. Everybody wants me. Every team's going to take me. Utah, imagine how different Utah would have been had they selected her. I mean,
Yes.
Allie Sentnor was a great pick. Do not get me wrong. But I think Croy Bethune going in and what she can do to a team is the best of the class of 2024. But I like the doubt. If I would have a chip on my shoulder thinking I should have gone first. And I think that we watched Croy Bethune go to the Washington Spirit, and that was the perfect place for her to go, the connections we saw. So I'm going to keep her third, actually. And first, I would have kept Allie Sentnor.
Nice.
Young forward coming out in the U.S. soccer system. She is great with both feet. She can score from distance. I mean, that's an immediate asset you're going to get from a player going to a team. So I'm going to keep Allie Sentnor as number one right now.
I like
Respect.
that, Darian.
Respect.
That's very fair,
Thanks.
especially because it's nice to get a forward, right? It is.
It's more of an immediate, you
Mhm.
know what you're going to get.
Whereas it could have taken Croy a bit to adjust. Now it didn't, right? That's why it's easy for us now to go through this and be like, yeah, I'm going Croy Bethune. I mean, I was shocked. I mean, I knew going into the draft what happened, but leading up to the draft, I was like, in my mock draft, she was going to go number one. She was so versatile. She had the experience. She understood the game. She was so intelligent when we got to talk to her and interview her. But then going into actual draft night, I got to interview a lot of the coaches heading into it. That's how we do our jobs, to get a little bit more insight, so we're prepared to talk about them on the desk. I knew that she probably was going to drop, which is crazy to think about. But it's also when you're a team preparing for number 2 or number 3, you have to assume that your first 2 picks are going to go no matter what. And the fact that Croy Bethune did drop all the way to 3, Washington was like, hell yeah, she's still available. Let's grab her and pick her up. So I'm also, I would have taken Croy Bethune number 1, no matter what team I was a manager of or GM of, I would have taken her. Who outperformed their draft position? Who maybe fell a little bit and did have that chip on their shoulder, Darian, and outperformed in 2024?
I am easily going to say Corey Dyke. She went number 22 in the draft from Penn State. I think quite an underrated player. I mean, 22 is not a bad draft pick. Don't get me wrong. That's not crazy, but she should be top 5, at least for me. How effective she was with Orlando, and Orlando's been a stacked team. She came into a very, very stacked team and fought her way into a starting lineup. When Orlando first started, it was McCutcheon at right back. Who else slipped in there? Delgado at right back.
Mhm.
They were moving Sams at the right back. Corey Dyke came
McLaren in there, right? Wasn't she a right back?
for Orlando.
Oh, no, sorry.
McLaren's with Seattle.
Yeah.
That's okay. But she came in and fought for that position. She improved so much that we saw her going against Temwa Shawinga and standing 10 hose down and keeping pace, making last-ditch tackles, shutting her down on that right side. She started in an NWSL final. This is a player that was so reliable and so good for Orlando that I think looking back, other teams that needed solid, consistent defenders that kept growing throughout the season, teams would absolutely have brought her higher up, because I think a lot of teams needed a more solid right back position this last year.
Christine, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking I have to go Emma Sears.
Yeah,
And probably because I had been on so many Louisville games all season. But I think that her second round, 28th pick, she certainly outperformed. I think that draft pick, I think she could have gone much higher. Round 1, maybe bottom shelf. She's a quality player. She showed a lot of maturity, even with injuries in and out. And, eventually that yielded some women's national team call-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
28th pick, last pick in the second round. Sears.
Yeah, that's low. I'm gonna go with Jimmy's Joseph for Chicago Red Stars. This, and I was going back and forth on this one, whether or not if it was like, should I stick with this, because there were a lot of trades that happened for Chicago, and ultimately they traded away that number 3 pick, which was Croy Bethune. And they did that on purpose. It was a little bit calculated. They had a couple of first round draft picks, so they felt that there was enough talent to go ahead and pick up some players that they can build with moving forward. So they go with Leilani Nesbeth in that first round, but that's not the player that I'm looking at. I'm looking at Jimmy's Joseph, because she ends up being the player that kind of has maybe a little bit of that rookie breakout for Chicago, more so than I think people anticipated for Nesbeth, who was not only coming in off of a really good collegiate program with Florida, but has international experience as well. And I think maybe for Joseph, who's coming from NC State, where maybe folks take a look at North Carolina and say, where's the school that you want to pull from? And a lot of people are looking at UNC and maybe not necessarily NC State. But this is a player I think that kind of came into the mix and immediately showed that she was adaptable, that she was very coachable and hungry. And I think walking away with a couple of goals, a couple of assists, I think kind of showed a lot of promise there for this player that hopefully the Chicago Stars FC are going to continue to build upon moving forward. And so I think maybe they could have even got her a little bit lower, because I don't know if this player was actually higher on some other mock drafts for some clubs. So they ended up getting her really early in that second round at 15. That maybe she could have dropped and they could have got her lower. But I think that they rated her enough to get her with that really, really high round. And I think for me, maybe she's going to have a better second year than she did in her first year, although her first year wasn't too shabby at all.
Mm-hmm. Good shout for Jimmy's Joseph. I wrote a couple down. Emma Sears, one of them, Christine. So I love that you gave her a shout. Courtney Brown, Washington Spirit midfielder. She was drafted 49th 9th. And I believe she could have gone higher. She's a bit of a utility player. She does a good job in the midfield of controlling the ball, creating in the attacking end, also does a lot of work defensively. I'm surprised at how low she went at 49. Also, Madison Curry out of
Yes.
Princeton University. She went 51st in the fourth round to Angel City FC. Now, I do think that we're sitting here talking about Madison Curry as a defender in the NWSL more out of what Angel City needed last year. And we were able to see what Curry could bring. And if there weren't injuries, maybe we wouldn't even be talking that much about Madison Curry. But it was out of necessity that she had to step up, slot into the back line for Becky Tweed in Angel City. And she did a tremendous job. She loves to get forward as an outside left back. She is so good at slide tackling. Her timing is really perfect. She contributes. She's good at crosses in the box. She plays on both sides of the ball. She's an Energizer bunny. She just never, ever, ever stops running. But I also don't think we would be talking about Curry if there weren't all those injuries to Angel City. I don't think she would have played.
Yeah.
And we maybe would have said 51 was a fine pick for an outside back who also only signed a 1-year contract, and now she's with Seattle. She's already moved on from Angel City. I also am giving a shout out to undrafted player Heather Stainbrook, who was out of Utah Valley. She was invited to Washington Spirit as a preseason trialist, and then in March signed a 3-year contract with Washington. Got significant time this past year, again, due to some injuries happening at Washington, but I still was impressed. I know we're saying outperformed their draft position, but Steinbrook wasn't even drafted. So to me, she outperformed her position by far last year. Dee, I heard you saying yes to Madison Curry. You like that one?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, listening to all of us, I had this thought, last night too, but listening to all of us talk about how these players outperform their draft pick, this is why the draft, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because you can be a top player and be brought to a team that is in a year where the organization is just saying, hey, we're just going to wash this year. Let's survive. Let's play. Let's try to bring in some players that we like, that we're going to make the staple for next year. And that sucks, your rookie year being brought into a team, or where they brought me here as knowing that they want me to be a backup, but yet I'm one of the best players out of the draft.
Yeah,
it is tough. So I love that we're rid of the draft. I mean, there's so many players here. Imagine if they were on a different team. Raylan Turner, imagine if she started with Portland.
Yep.
Maya Doms, Peyton Linehan.
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of players. Macy Bell, did we see the best out of them? But I don't think we had the opportunity to. So I love that the draft is gone, because I think now it allows those players the freedom to actually go somewhere where you can slot into a team where, hey, they need this position. I'm going to get playing time. Or, okay, I know that I can go learn from this player and it can be really competitive. Or it just makes things better. So I'm excited. It's crazy looking back at this and the years that some of these players had and how low they went.
Yeah.
I love it though, but I can't wait to see what happens this next year with no draft. It's going to be, I can't wait till next year when we're doing this and looking at where players decided to go and if they outperformed or if they underperformed.
Yep.
Well,
it's all good.
There's an opposite side of that too. Who maybe underperformed their draft position? Maybe he didn't fit into the position so well, or the team, the tactics, what was happening. Anyone come to mind for you, Darian?
I mean, Raylan Turner's one for me. I think when we first did the draft, I was like, I would be picking her. I think she is a great forward. She brings a lot of energy. Imagine it. She's a player that went to the Courage. She would have had a completely different year than at Louisville. She fits the Courage much more than, we're trying to figure out what Louisville was trying to do. I don't know if they had the players to fit Bev's style just yet. But I think, imagine if the Courage picked her up. I think we would have gotten the best out of her because that style of play suits her. She's 100% going forward. She's great in the box. She's great at getting on the end of crosses. She's a great finisher. She can press. She likes to go 1v1. That puts her in really good positions. And I think that Louisville it just wasn't the spot for her to maybe grow as much as if she went to another team. Yeah. And I don't think that that's anything on her. I think that that's just the circumstance she was drafted into.
Yeah,
To me.
and that was a player that I was high on too.
Yeah.
I was hopeful that Louisville specifically would take her so that they can kind of have a young attacking presence to build around. But for some reason, it just wasn't clicking, and we saw her really kind of become this kind of off the bench spark, even for Louisville at times, and even in Portland during that trade. So I do wonder what year 2 is going to look like for her, just because she is in Portland now. Sophia Wilson's going to be back, hopefully recovered from, a long 2024 and perform well. But they also made some offseason moves where, I wonder how she's going to fit within the Thorns scheme now. And so, is there going to be opportunity for this player to actually continue to develop? What is going to be the plan for Rob Gale and this particular player, because they made a move for her. So how do they see her moving forward? So I'm very curious about it. I think there's a ton of players here. We have a list that we can go through in front of us, players that I think that we can go through that maybe we could say, were they given enough opportunity? Were they given enough, do we see that development and that leap, from collegiate game to the pro game actually take place in year 1 for them? And I think there's obviously a lot more players where we could say, yes, that was the scenario for them, and a lot fewer
Who draws
players.
that out for you, Sandra? Who's one of those players?
I mean, yeah, I was looking at Raylan Turner for sure, but I think maybe just for giggles, maybe going on the other side of things, like you take a look at like a Brecken Mozingo, who was a really high value player coming out of the draft. I mean, went top 5 to Utah Royals, and again, I think you see a little bit of that gap in adjustment in playing, but you also have to take into consideration, I think, a lot of the factors team by team. It took Utah a very long time to get going with anything formationally, tactically, and I think when you are not only are you an expansion team entering the league, but you've got an expansion team with a ton of young players coming in through the draft, and you don't have the guidebook for them. You weren't giving them the tools to try to go ahead and develop. You see a little bit of that that lack of bite, or that lack of play. So even though this is a player that maybe got a extensive amount of time with Utah, maybe didn't produce in ways that they were hopeful that she could in that first year. But I think there were also parts of Mozingo's game where it was, some of her game is like, if you don't actually notice her too much, doesn't mean that she's out there doing her job. But you have to, if you are an attacking player on getting called in or drafted into a team, and you're not only are you getting called in for an expansion team, but you're doing that and getting drafted alongside an Ally Sentnor, that's tough to maybe cope with as well. So, wanted to maybe see more in the numbers there, just with the games that she was given, but we didn't see that. But I think knowing what we know now, Utah had a tough go of things, and I think we saw for certain players who got called in or drafted into the fold, they also kind of suffered alongside with that. So
Totally. I think you could say that on the other side too, like Washington Spirit. They had 5 draft picks, 4 in the first round, that they did such a good job at utilizing their rookies in putting them into positions to succeed. They had 3rd pick, Croy Bethune, 5th pick, Hal Hirschfeld, 7th pick, Kate Wiesner, 13th, McKenna Morris, 49th, Courtney Brown, and Heather Steenbrook, who was a walk-on, a preseason trialist. To me, it's so much about where you end up and how that team utilizes you, whether it's injuries or formations or tactics, or even just giving you a chance to try to play. And Washington did a really good job of allowing their rookies to make a big impact. Savvy King, for me, was a defender at Bay FC. She only played one season out of UNC. She went number 2 overall. The expectations for Savvy King were so high, and we just didn't see her enough last year at Bay. I don't think it was the system that was right for her, but I'm hopeful kind of for what is to come for Savvy King. But she went so high, and it's such a young player. I mean, to only play 1 season collegiately and then to go professionally, she's young. She's a young player. Okay, but I want to ask this one before we get too ahead of ourselves. Who in their sophomore season, which rookie from last year are we really excited to see developed, whether it's because they changed teams or they're growing their tactics? Christine, who do you have your eyes on in 2025 specifically as a sophomore in the league?
Let's see who could be coming more into their own. You know what? Can Hal further come into her own? I feel like
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
yes.
a good one.
Yes.
I feel like
Totally.
she's so remarkably good this first year that, like, I don't know, it's kind of terrifying to think how her game can continue to develop. So she's going to be a force to be reckoned with, I think, for both club and country in the near and distant future. So that, yeah, that sparks a little bit of hope and excitement in me.
D?
I like that. I was also thinking Hal because, when we've spoken to Adrian Gonzalez and Jonathan Heraldez, they've talked about Hal and how great she is. And hey, her ceiling is really far away. There's a lot of potential in this player. And I think looking at her game, she was so solid defensively, and we only saw glimpses of her in the attack. So now in her sophomore season, hey, how can I develop my game? How can I be more threatening? How can I combine more with Corey Bethune and get more into the attack? Let's see her take some shots. Let's see her get a little bit higher up, getting on the end of crosses, being a bruiser in the attacking third for the Spirit. So she's a player that I think her sophomore season is going to be lights out because she already has the fight, the well-timed tackles, the grittiness, the heart that team needs that you want from a 6. And I hope that we get to see her jump into that attacking position a little bit more, because I think with the national team, if she really wants to be a staple on that team, that's the next part of her game that I think could make her solid, especially as a competitor against Coffee, maybe in that 6.
She provides something so different too
Yeah.
than Coffee.
Very.
I'm going
Sandra,
She's a player you hate to go against. So,
a bruiser.
yeah.
let's stay lower half of the pitch. I like the energy. I'm gonna go Kennedy Wesley, San Diego.
Yes.
Sandra, same. She's mine too.
I just listen. It's so the team is in a rebuild. You can't sugarcoat that. They're not shying away from that. All the moves symbolize that, and it's going to come on the players who have already been part of San Diego Wave to kind of redefine, who they want to be moving forward. And there's a part of that. There's a part of that I hate. You hate that to see that falls on the players, but they can't control those things that are happening outside of the pitch, unfortunately. And I thought that this player had such promise during 2024, and looking ahead, it's wide open for Kennedy Wesley.
Mhm.
So
Totally.
we're talking about potentially a career defining type of season for this player with that club. So I think Kennedy Wesley could really put together a special 2025. And I'll also give a special shout out to Ellie Wheeler for Kansas City.
Ooh.
Wheeler's a really, really good
I
one.
like Wheeler. That's a good one. Mine, Sandra, also Kennedy Wesley, great minds think alike. She was drafted 12th overall out of Stanford. We knew she had history playing with Naomi Girma, and there was going to be a lot of partnership there at the center back at San Diego. And then with some of the injuries that occurred at San Diego in the back line, Wesley stepped up and stepped in seamlessly. And she made some rookie mistakes on the ball at times, but you're only going to grow if you can make those mistakes. When you have a gold medalist, Kaylin Sheridan, in net behind you, you're playing alongside your former college teammate in Naomi Girma. You have the stability of someone like Danielle Colaprico in the midfield ahead of you. You have the opportunity to grow. And I wish we saw more from Wesley last year to make some mistakes and get better. But now, without Abby Dahlkemper, she's gone. Without Naomi Girma, this is an opportunity for Kennedy Wesley to take that center back position and say, it is mine. It is mine to lose. I want to see her grow and get better. It'll be interesting to see, though, also without Casey Stoney, because I think Stoney does a good job of developing defenders.
It's funny you say that, Lisa, because I remember Casey Stoney talking about her, particularly in a coach's call when they had that string of injuries, how mature, how smart, how coachable. And she emphasized how coachable Kennedy Wesley is, just because she said she wants to learn and she constantly wants to keep refining. There's like this inner compass with this player in particular, that she saw that she was like, she's going to be something great, and she's already doing great things. Even communicating in the back line that you wouldn't expect from a rookie just trying to acclimate to NWSL. So that's an excellent shout.
This was fun to kind of redraft the 2024
Yeah, I like
draft
this.
class. I like this. Let us know your thoughts. Who maybe was a little overrated, who was a little underrated last year, and who are you excited to watch in their second season in the NWSL?